Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday. Hey, this is what 71 looks like. Wow. Looks a lot different than I thought it did when I was really young. I'm not going to do a little talk or a little sermon for you. I'm just going to ramble a little bit, and I hope you listen in, because 71 years has been a journey. And I was just thinking that, the greatest thing that I've ever done with my life, and we're not talking about having a doctorate of spiritual studies or being a doctorate of spiritual psychology, or being a man of the year, or different trophies and different entertainer of the year. We're not awards that are on my wall back there that you can, I don't know if you can see or not, you can see. We're not talking about that mess. We're talking about the greatest thing I've ever done is that I've chosen to live when I wanted to die. And I was just thinking, I wanted to share that with you, because so much of my life I just wanted to be dead. Do you know, when I was born, my father had said to my mother, I don't want this baby anyway. And when I was born, my mother left me at the hospital, and my father went off to be with one of his girlfriends, and my father's parents took me from the hospital. And they also had my brother, which was a year older than me, but he was paralyzed with a brain tumor. So they had their hands full. And I kind of fell through the cracks because they doted on him so much, and that's understandable. And my grandmother also was a gospel singer, the old big tent revivals and brush arbors, where you dunk people in the ocean or in the stream when you baptize them. And I remember being wrapped up in a little cradle thing, and they'd put me on the front row of the seats at the Oral Roberts big tent meetings. And I remember sitting there watching Oral Roberts have the folding chair, and people go by, and he would he had a white shirt on, or the sleeves rolled up, right? And he'd say, "Heal, heal." And I'm not making fun of it, I'm just telling you what my experience was. And 10, 20,000 people in these tents, and A. Allen and Branham and all of these. Listen, I've seen it all, right? And when I was maybe 2 years old, it got to be too much for my grandmother to try to take care of me and my brother too. And that somehow they got a hold of my mother, and my mother came and took me in to live in Los Angeles with her. Let me just be real about it. She was a prostitute and managed a bar at the same time. And she would entertain her men friends when the bar would close and at different times. And I actually slept on beer kegs on a little mat in the back of the bar. And I traced my foot so I could put the cardboard from beer boxes in so the water wouldn't get in my shoes. But I remember when the bar would close, I would wash the glasses for my mother while she entertained her friends in the back. And I would drink the drinks. I'd drink the drinks, and then I'd wash the glasses and stack them out nice. And then I would go and I would lay down on this machine that you could put quarters in and you could bowl on. Well, what I know now is that I didn't just go to sleep, I passed out. I was drunk. 2, 3 years old, I was drunk and I passed out. And that went on for a number of years of just not being wanted, not feeling like I belonged anywhere, not having anybody say, hey, you're important, that I love you or whatever. And eventually I shut down and I quit speaking. My mother disappeared one night. That's a whole different story. In the middle of the night, and I ended up living in pseudo foster homes for the next several years, and had shut down completely. That I quit speaking, and people thought I was actually retarded. I remember one family that took me to Oregon to live with them, and remember the woman said to the principal of the school, oh, they called me George in those days because her husband's name was George. You know, they changed my name every time I changed a family. And she'd say, this is George Jr. And, you know, he's a little slow, if you know what I mean. You know, so how did that go on? So I had the religious world that was dumped into me, and then I had the secular world that was dumped into me, and the footing that I had and the foundation I had, there was no footing or foundation. It was a mess, and somewhere in between all that, my mother actually poured hot grease on me, and it meant to go on my head and on my face, but I ducked it, went on my back. Ended up in the hospital. But for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, I would never let anybody see me without a shirt. Because emotionally, what had happened, I was scarred, I was flawed. I was damaged goods. Who would want damaged goods? And so I remember when I was back to living with my grandparents and I went to high school, I got out of PE. Not because I didn't want to play, not because I didn't want the boys to see me naked, but because I didn't want anybody to see the scar on my back, because I knew that I wasn't good enough. I would never amount to anything. And eventually I snuck out and I got in the drama department. I wanted to be an actor. And my grandparents found out that I wanted to be an actor because in the local paper, there was an article with a picture of me in a play, and it mentioned a scholarship that I was given to go and study acting. I wasn't allowed to take that scholarship because in our house, we didn't even watch TV because it was called The Devil's Eye. You know, you're not gonna watch The Devil's Eye. So I went to school and became a minister. And I don't think at that time I really wanted to be a minister. It just didn't ring true for me at that time. But you know, people had, you know how people tell you what they want you to be? And it seems like we want people to be and act a certain way, not for their benefit, but we want them to act and be a certain way so we're comfortable with them. So I went to school, went to Oral Roberts, and I got a doctorate and all this other kind of stuff that went on. But I knew about God, and I went on to get married. My wife was chosen for me, and we got married. We pastored a church. We built a church. We had a TV show. We were the Ken and Barbie of the charismatic movement. I wasn't Barbie at the time. I was Ken. And then a couple years into that, got divorced. And then later on, I got into the gay scene. I didn't fit in the Christian scene. I didn't fit in the gay scene. I didn't fit anywhere. You know, I could go to a gay bar and stand there. People would actually back up against the wall where I'd be standing because I was invisible. And then I got into the drugs. I didn't fit into the drug scene. Then I became homeless. I didn't even fit with the homeless people. They said I was too uppity to hang out with them. I wanted to die. And I prayed, God, if you're there, please kill me. Please kill me now. There's nothing for me to live with. I don't want to be here on this earth. My life was so painful. And eventually I decided it was time to commit suicide. I was living in a penthouse at the time and I decided I'm gonna commit suicide. Go figure that one. That time I had about $80,000 cash in my checking account, as well as other things. But I was gonna commit suicide because I wasn't worth anything. And I remember that, you know, I was having sex with so many people because sex was love. I didn't really understand intimacy. I never knew about intimacy, which is intimacy. Somebody seeing into you. How can they see into you when you can't even see into yourself and appreciate yourself? So this is the first time that I've actually celebrated myself. 71 years old and I'm celebrating myself. And I was telling somebody just yesterday, I said, do you know, it took me to be 70 before I even appreciated myself. And what is it that made the difference? I think what made the difference is I got so sick and tired of what I thought I knew and I didn't know, and what I had heard about God too, and religion, that I started to research it for myself. And I wanted to know what was my purpose for being on this planet. And I wanted proof. It wasn't just enough pie in the sky to say, oh, you gotta take it on blind faith. Yeah, right. Been there, done that. For me, hey, didn't work. So I began to study the quantum physics of how the universe came to be. And whether it's a Big Bang theory or whether it's a more of a Christian theory of creation, there had to be source. And all energy has to take some kind of form. And coming to the realization, as I've said in my teachings on this being the Earth School, that what I call God, some of you call a universal consciousness, some of you call higher power. What I view God as the greatest stem cell that there ever was. That creativity that was here in the beginning is that this force, this source, poured that same creativity into us. And I call that source God. And as I call that source God, what I understand 100% is that God is love, period. And that I am here, you are here, we're here to be the expression of God on this earth. That's it, period. God doesn't give a rat's behind who you love, whether it's a man, woman, two women, two men, a man and a woman. Care less about that. What God does care about is that you're the expression of love. You're the expression. You know, Maya Angelou said, people aren't going to always remember what you wrote or what you said, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. When you walk into a room, how do you make people feel? Do you make them feel that there's so much wonderful human treasure that they are? Do you make them feel that they're important? You know, y'all that go to church on Sunday, you go to church on Sunday and you go, hallelujah, and then you go out and you talk bad about your neighbor on Monday, or you're doing some kind of discrimination or some kind of mess or maligning somebody. Well, let me tell you, you've got religious thoughts instead of God thoughts. And you're not being the expression of God on the planet. One of the greatest things that ever occurred was when I was reading the Course in Miracles, and also Rumi, when he says, you know, our job is not to seek love, but our job is to remove the blocks and the barriers that keep us from knowing love and expressing love. That made sense to me. I began to work on those blocks. It's taken time. Hey, took time married to a woman, took time being married to a man. All those were different experiences. And it was about removing the blocks. And so what I know in my life now is this, is that my purpose on this earth is to be the expression of God, to be the very expression. And that's the expression of love. And some of you have a need to view God as a he and as a physical entity. I've been there, I know what that's like, that's a good starting place. But you see, now in my life, I sense spirit right beside me and in me. Every day, every hour of the day. And as I say from the Course in Miracles sometimes, if you knew who walked beside you on the path that you have chosen, you would never fear or doubt ever again. Happy birthday to me. I celebrate me today, and I celebrate you, sending you love today.